A young black woman faces mockery at a corporate presentation for her natural speaking voice. When they try to silence her unprofessional dialect, she transforms their bias into her greatest weapon, proving that authenticity isn't a flaw, it's power. Truth doesn't need permission to speak. The projector hummed in the darkness. Simone's hands gripped the podium edges, knuckles tight against polished wood. 43 faces stared back from the Whitmore and Associates conference room. White leather chairs, glass walls, the sharp scent of expensive coffee. Our community outreach strategy could increase market penetration by laughter erupted from the back row. Not polite chuckles. Real laughter, the kind that strips you bare. Simone froze mid-word. Her throat closed around the syllables she'd practiced for weeks. The PowerPoint slide glowed behind her. Bold graphs, clean data, irrefutable proof. Marcus Whitfield, Senior VP of Marketing, leaned back in his chair. Salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, smile sharp as broken glass. Simone, sweetheart, maybe try speaking a bit more professionally? The room shifted. 30 seconds of silence that felt like drowning. Jennifer from accounting covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. Tom exchanged a glance with Sarah, eyebrows raised in shared amusement. Even the interns looked uncomfortable, staring at their phones. Simone's voice came out smaller than she'd ever heard it. "I'm sorry, I don't—" "Just slow down," Marcus interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "Enunciate. We need to understand what you're actually saying here." Her grandmother's proposal printout crinkled in her trembling fingers. The fluorescent light suddenly felt too bright, too exposing. Her emerald green blazer, the one she'd bought specifically for this presentation, felt like a costume she tried to continue. The words caught like stones in her throat. 3 weeks earlier, Simone Green had believed in possibilities. 28 years old. 2 years deep into Whitmore and Associates, she'd learned the rules quickly. Straighten your natural curls into sleek professionalism. Replace y'all with everyone. Flatten the Atlanta drawl that carried her grandmother's stories, her mother's strength, her own truth. She was good at it. Dangerously good. Her cubicle sat in the corner of the 3rd floor, far from the windowed offices where decisions happened. Close enough to hear them laughing at lunch, discussing golf handicaps and summer homes in the Hamptons. She'd smile, contribute polite comments, and return to her data, because Simone understood numbers. Marketing analytics made sense in ways corporate culture never would. She could track demographic patterns, identify underserved markets, predict consumer behavior with 92% accuracy. Her latest project consumed her. 6 months of research proving Whitmore was ignoring their most profitable demographic, Black and brown communities, with combined purchasing power exceeding $12 billion annually. They weren't marketing to these neighborhoods. They weren't even trying. Her proposal would change that. Community partnerships, culturally relevant campaigns, authentic engagement strategies, everything backed by hard data they couldn't ignore. She'd pitched it to Marcus in passing. He'd surprised her by saying yes, present it to the executive team. Simone had spent 3 weeks perfecting every slide, every transition, every carefully sanitized word. She practiced in front of her bathroom mirror, watching her mouth shape vowels into acceptable patterns. Rehearsed with her roommate Keisha, who'd shake her head sadly but say nothing. The night before the presentation, she'd called her mother in Atlanta. "You sound tired, baby. You sound different." "I sound professional, Mama." A long pause. "If you say so." Now that presentation day had arrived, Simone sat in her car in the parking garage. Royal blue dress, nude heels, portfolio briefcase. She looked like she belonged. She'd made sure of it. She took 3 deep breaths, checked her reflection one final time, smoothed down invisible wrinkles. Time to prove herself. The conference room felt colder than usual. Simone connected her laptop to the projector with steady hands. Marcus sat at the head of the table, flanked by executives she'd only seen in company-wide emails. She began strong, voice steady, slides crisp, data compelling. Our current marketing strategy overlooks key demographic segments that represent significant revenue opportunities. Specifically, Black and Latinx communities in metropolitan areas show the numbers flowed smoothly. Purchase patterns, brand loyalty metrics, untapped market value. She'd rehearsed this section 50 times, then nerves hit like a wave. Her throat tightened. The practiced cadence slipped. Old patterns emerged. The rhythm and flow she'd spent years suppressing. We finna reach demographics y'all been missing entirely. These communities got spending power, brand loyalty, and we ain't even trying to... The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Marcus raised one hand. Simone, stop. She froze, cursor hovering over the next slide. This isn't a rap video. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Can you translate that into business language? Something we can actually present to clients. Laughter rippled through the room. Tom coughed to hide a chuckle. Jennifer's face flushed red from suppressed giggles. Even the junior associates looked away, embarrassed for her. Simone's hands shook against the laptop. I was just explaining the demographic data. We heard you, Marcus interrupted smoothly. But let's keep it professional. Corporate speak, not street speak. Understand? Her voice came out strangled. Yes, sir. Good. Continue. And Simone? He leaned forward slightly. Maybe practice your diction before the next presentation. More laughter. Quieter this time, but cutting deeper. She clicked to the next slide. Her prepared words vanished from memory. Everything she'd practiced scattered like leaves in wind. She stammered through 3 more slides, each word feeling wrong in her mouth. Marcus checked his watch. Let's table this. Simone, polish it up and we'll revisit next quarter. Next quarter meant never. She disconnected her laptop with trembling fingers. 43 people filed out without meeting her eyes. The projector hummed in the empty room, casting her title slide against white walls. Community outreach, authentic engagement strategies. Simone stood alone in the fluorescent brightness. Proposal clutched against her chest. The word authentic suddenly felt like a cruel joke. The women's bathroom on the 3rd floor smelled like industrial lavender and broken dreams. Simone locked herself in the far stall. Her hands pressed against cold tile, head bowed, breath coming in short gasps that sounded too loud in the silence. She couldn't cry. Not here. Not where anyone might hear. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, that constant electrical hum that never stopped, never gave you peace. It matched the static in her brain, the scrambled thoughts that wouldn't form coherent sentences. Street speak. Rap video. Translate it into business language. She'd spent 2 years translating herself. Apparently she'd failed. Her grandmother's voice rose through the shame, clear as summer rain. Don't let them make you small, baby. Your voice carries generations. But Grandma Rose had never worked in corporate America. Never sat in meetings where every syllable was judged, every inflection measured against an invisible standard of acceptability. Never watched white colleagues butcher basic English grammar while being praised for their strong communication skills. Simone stared at her reflection in the stall door's metal surface. Distorted, warped, barely recognizable. She'd bought this royal blue dress specifically because it looked non-threatening. Spent 40 minutes that morning straightening her hair into submission. Practiced pronouncing every word with crisp, flat precision. Still not enough. Never enough. The bathroom door opened. Voices filtered in. Jennifer and Sarah from accounting. God, that was so awkward. I felt bad for her, but like, know your audience, right? Marcus was trying to help. She just doesn't get corporate culture yet. The door swung shut. Their laughter faded down the hallway. Simone pressed her forehead against the cool metal, made herself count to 100, forced air into her lungs. At 97, she straightened her spine. At 98, she smoothed her dress. At 99, she unlocked the stall. At 100, she walked out. Head high, face neutral, mask firmly in place. But something small and bright flickered beneath the shame, something that tasted like defiance. 16 years old, Simone sat in her grandmother's Atlanta kitchen. Summer heat pressed through the windows. The smell of peach cobbler filled the air. Grandma Rose was reading the newspaper, shaking her head at some article about voting rights. She'd been an activist in the 60s, marched with King, got arrested twice for sit-ins, never apologized for speaking truth to power. "Why are you talking like that, baby?" Grandma Rose looked up suddenly. Simone froze, glass of sweet tea halfway to her mouth. "Like what?" "All proper and pressed. Flattening your vowels like you're ashamed of where you come from." Heat flooded Simone's face. She'd been practicing for college interviews, mimicking the speech patterns of successful people on TV. "I'm just preparing for the real world." Grandma Rose set down the paper. Her eyes held that particular sharpness, the look that saw straight through excuses into truth. "Listen close. Your voice carries generations, baby. My mama's mama, who couldn't read but could recite scripture like poetry. My daddy, who spoke 3 languages, but white folks called him illiterate because he had an accent. Every person who was told they sounded wrong for being themselves." She reached across the table, took Simone's hand. "The world gonna ask you to shrink, to translate yourself into something palatable, to speak their language so they don't have to hear yours. So what do I do?" Simone's voice came out small. "You decide what price you're willing to pay." Grandma Rose squeezed her hand. "But baby, don't you ever silence yourself completely. That's a death they can't see, but you'll feel it every single day." Simone had nodded, promised, believed she'd remember. Now, 12 years later, sitting at her office desk at 6 p.m. in an empty building, she barely recognized the woman from that kitchen. She'd code-switched through 4 years of college, learned to navigate predominantly white spaces by erasing anything that marked her as other. Got the job at Whitmore by being the most palatable version of herself, qualified enough to hire, safe enough not to threaten. 2 years of swallowing her words. 2 years of watching less qualified colleagues get promoted. 2 years of being praised for being articulate, that particular compliment that always felt like an insult wrapped in approval. Her proposal represented 6 months of unpaid overtime. Research conducted in her own time, community connections built through her church and neighborhood networks. She'd given Whitmore the roadmap to millions in untapped revenue. They'd laughed at how she delivered it. Simone closed her laptop slowly. The office felt tomb quiet. Her phone buzzed. Text from her mother. "How'd the presentation go, baby?" She stared at the message. Typed 3 different responses. Deleted them all finally. They're thinking about it. The lie tasted bitter. 11 p.m. Simone should have gone home 3 hours ago, but the building's nighttime emptiness offered something the daytime never did. Privacy. No performative cheerfulness, no forced small talk, no watching every syllable that left her mouth. She'd come back to her desk after dinner to print copies of her proposal for revision. "Polish it up," Marcus had said. She knew what that meant. Make it whiter. Her printer jammed. Of course it did. The network printer on the executive floor still worked nights. She took the elevator up, the hallway lights flickering to life as motion sensors detected her presence. The executive printer sat in a small room near Marcus's office. As she waited for her documents, she noticed the office door slightly ajar, light spilling from inside. He'd left his computer on, screensaver rotating through company photos. Simone knew she should leave. Instead, she glanced down the empty hallway. Stepped closer, email inbox visible on the screen. Her name in the subject line of 3 different threads. She shouldn't look. This violated every professional boundary. Her hand moved to the mouse. The first email from Jennifer to Marcus. "Today's presentation was painful. Is she always like that?" "So urban?" Marcus's response. "We're working on her cultural fit. Smart girl, just needs polish." Second email thread. Tom to the senior team. Simone's accent was distracting. Hard to take the data seriously when it sounds like we're in a barbershop instead of a boardroom. Marcus again. Noted. I'll address her communication style. Third email. This one older from her hiring process. Marcus to HR. Green checks diversity boxes and has solid credentials. Keep her on low-visibility projects until we're sure she can handle client-facing work. Simone's vision blurred. Her hands gripped the desk edge. Low-visibility projects. Communication style. Cultural fit. 2 years of careful performance, and they'd been mocking her in writing the whole time. She forced herself to keep reading. Found another thread buried in archived folders. Internal demographic research. Data showing exactly what her proposal had outlined. Black and Latinx communities represented Whitmore's largest untapped market. Billions in potential revenue. The research was dated 8 months ago, conducted by an external consultant who'd recommended immediate action. Marcus had ignored it. Filed it away. Waited. Then Simone had presented the same findings, and he'd humiliated her for how she delivered them, not because the data was wrong, because she'd momentarily stopped performing acceptability while presenting truth they'd already confirmed. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The fluorescent lights hummed their endless static song. She pulled out her phone, photographed the emails, the demographic reports, the consultant's recommendations. Her hands shook so badly she had to brace the phone against the desk. When she'd captured everything, she backed away slowly, grabbed her printouts from the printer, walked to the elevator on legs that felt disconnected from her body. The building's lobby stretched empty and cold. Security guard nodded without looking up. Outside, November air bit through her blazer. She stood in the parking garage, breath clouding in the darkness. Simone stared at the photos on her phone. Evidence of dismissal, proof of prejudice, documentation of exactly how little her carefully constructed professionalism actually mattered. They'd never respected her. They'd tolerated her, barely, and they needed her insights desperately, just packaged in a way that didn't make them uncomfortable. Something hot and sharp crystallized in her chest. Not quite anger, not quite resolve, something dangerous. 3 days later, Simone requested a meeting with Marcus. Professional email, careful wording, no hint of what she'd discovered. He agreed immediately. Probably assumed she'd quit. Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. His office smelled like expensive cologne and leather furniture. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, the one designed slightly lower than his, subtle power dynamics built into the architecture. Simone. Good to see you. How are you holding up? She sat with perfect posture. Hands folded. Voice measured. I'd like another opportunity to present my proposal. I've refined the language. Marcus leaned back, relief visible in his shoulders. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. You've got talent, Simone. You just need to learn how to package it appropriately. I understand. Each word cost her something. I practiced my delivery, made it more accessible. Perfect, he smiled, warm, encouraging, completely unaware. The executive team appreciates team players who can take constructive feedback. Constructive. The word hung between them like poison gas. I'd like to present Friday. Small group, just you and maybe 2 senior colleagues. Done. Marcus typed something into his calendar. And Simone, I appreciate your professionalism here. Some people would have gotten defensive. You took the note and adjusted. That's how you succeed in this industry. She nodded, smiled. Let him believe she was grateful. Anything else? He asked. Just one question. She kept her voice light, curious. The community outreach strategy. Are we targeting it toward the demographics I identified? Black and Latinx urban markets? Absolutely. Your research was solid. We just needed clearer communication around it. So the strategy itself is approved. Just the presentation needed work? Exactly right. He smiled wider, probably pleased she was finally understanding. Great insights, just delivered in a way that wasn't quite landing. Simone stood, extended her hand. He shook it, firm, professional, dismissive. She walked out of his office with her mask perfectly intact, The elevator doors closed. Alone, she let herself exhale. Friday's presentation wouldn't be refined. It would be sanitized. Every sentence scrubbed clean of personality, authenticity, anything that marked it as hers. She'd perform perfect corporate speak, flat vowels, careful enunciation, the vocal equivalent of beige wallpaper, and he'd praise her for it. They'd approve the strategy, implement her ideas, all while believing she'd finally learned to communicate properly. The elevator reached the 3rd floor. Simone walked to her cubicle, opened her laptop, stared at the revised presentation she'd been preparing. 2 versions sat in her files. Version A, sanitized, safe, exactly what they wanted. Version B, authentic, powerful, the voice she'd been silencing. Her cursor hovered between them. Grandma Rosie's voice whispered through the fluorescent hum, "You decide what price you're willing to pay." Simone closed her eyes, made a choice, then deleted one of the files. Friday arrived with the weight of decisions made in silence. Simone woke at 5 a.m., showered in darkness, stared at her reflection while straightening her hair into corporate submission one more time. The woman in the mirror looked polished, professional, empty. She arrived at the office an hour early. Rehearsed version A of her presentation, the neutered, acceptable one. Every word felt like swallowing glass. 8:30 a.m. email notification chimed. Subject, urgent, client community forum. Simone clicked it open. Marcus to all senior staff and key personnel. She was CC'd last. Whitmore's biggest client, Henderson Development Group, hosting community forum next Tuesday. Want authentic voices to discuss urban development impact. Need someone to represent our commitment to community engagement. Simone Green will present our outreach strategy. Her breath caught. 2nd paragraph, Simone. This is your moment to show corporate polish under pressure. High visibility opportunity. Keep it professional, articulate, and client-ready. This could make your career here. 3rd paragraph, the warning wrapped in encouragement. Remember, you're representing Whitmore's brand. Corporate image is crucial. Stick to approved talking points. I'll send you the script by Monday. Simone read it 3 times. Felt the cage closing tighter. Community forum. Real people from neighborhoods like the one she grew up in. Faces that looked like her grandmother's, her mother's, hers, and Marcus wanted her to speak to them in the language of performance. To represent authenticity while being completely inauthentic. Her phone buzzed. Text from her mother. Baby, been thinking about you. Your grandmother used to say the hardest battles are the ones you fight against becoming someone you're not. Love you. The office began filling with morning noise. Colleagues settling into cubicles, coffee brewing, the mundane soundtrack of another day in exile from herself. Simone stared at the email, at the presentation files on her desktop, at the phone with her mother's text glowing. Her fingers moved across the keyboard before conscious thought caught up. Reply to Marcus. I'll be there Tuesday. I'll speak my truth. Take it or leave it. She hit send before fear could stop her. 3 seconds of silence. Then her heart hammering so loud she could barely hear the office chatter around her. Marcus's response came within 30 seconds. Simone, call me, now. She closed her laptop, picked up her bag, walked past her cubicle toward the elevator. Her phone rang. Marcus, she sent it to voicemail. Outside in the November cold, standing in the parking garage with her car keys in her trembling hand, Simone finally let herself feel it. Terror, exhilaration, the vertigo of jumping without knowing if anything would catch her. She'd just thrown away 2 years of careful performance, possibly her entire career, for the chance to speak 5 words she'd been forbidden her whole professional life. I'll speak my truth. The phone rang again. Marcus, then Jennifer. Then someone from HR. Simone turned off her phone, got in her car, drove home through morning traffic, hands steady on the wheel despite everything crumbling. She'd made her choice. Tuesday would prove if it was bravery or professional suicide. Monday night. 24 hours before the forum, Simone sat on her apartment floor surrounded by note cards. 2 stacks. Left side contained Marcus's approved script, sanitized corporate language that said nothing. Right side held her own words, raw, authentic, dangerous. Her phone had been off since Friday. 17 voicemails waited unheard. She knew what they'd say. Warnings wrapped in concern. Threats disguised as guidance. The apartment felt too quiet. Keisha had gone to visit family for the week. No buffer between Simone and the choice that kept circling like a predator. She picked up a note card from the left stack. Read Marcus's words aloud. Whitmore and Associates values inclusive community partnerships that leverage synergistic stakeholder engagement. The sentence meant nothing. Corporate word salad designed to sound impressive while communicating zero substance. Right stack. Her words, "We've been ignoring y'all. We want your money, but won't respect your voice. That changes now or it don't change at all." Truth. Blunt and uncomfortable and real, her hands shook. She set both cards down, the living room walls pressed closer. Everything she'd worked for sat balanced on tomorrow's decision. Her career, her credibility, her financial stability, all of it teetering on the edge of 5 minutes at a microphone. Her phone sat dark and silent on the coffee table. She turned it on. Messages flooded in. Marcus, HR Jennifer with fake concern. Then one from her mother, sent 2 hours ago. "Your grandmother would be proud, baby. Be you, whatever happens, be you." Simone's eyes burned. She wouldn't let herself cry. Instead, she stood. Walked to the small altar in her bedroom corner. Photos of Grandma Rose, her father who'd passed when she was 12, ancestors whose names she'd never learned, but whose strength she carried. Grandma Rose stared back from a photo taken at a voting rights rally. Sight in her hands, fire in her eyes, no apology in her stance. "I'm scared," Simone whispered to the photo. "I'm so scared." The apartment settled into deeper silence. No answer came, but something shifted in her chest, small and fierce. The thing that had been dying slowly under 2 years of performance flickered back to life. Fear didn't mean wrong. Sometimes fear meant you were finally doing something that mattered. Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. Simone dressed carefully. Not for Whitmore, for herself. Mustard yellow blouse her grandmother would have called bold as sunshine. Natural hair in twists she hadn't worn to the office in 2 years. Gold hoops her mother had given her for college graduation. She looked like herself. Felt terrifying and right simultaneously. The community forum was at 10 a.m. Southside Community Center, 30 minutes from downtown's glass towers. A neighborhood where corner stores sold loose cigarettes, and grandmothers watched from porches, and everybody knew everybody's business, where people sounded like her. Simone arrived early. The community center smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee. Folding chairs faced a small stage. Someone had hung a banner, "Development with dignity, community voices matter." She watched people file in. Black women in church hats, younger folks in hoodies, Latino families with children, white allies with earnest expressions. The real stakeholders Marcus's emails had reduced to urban demographics. These weren't data points. They were people. Marcus arrived 15 minutes before start time. Saw Simone's outfit, her hair, her hoops. His face went carefully blank. "Simone, we need to talk." "Not now," she kept her voice steady. "You're representing the firm. There's a dress code. For whose comfort?" She met his eyes. "Theirs or yours?" He opened his mouth, closed it, seemed to recalculate strategy. "Just stick to the script. Please, Henderson Development is watching. This is your career." "I know." She walked away before he could respond, found a quiet corner, pulled out her phone. Opened the photos she'd taken in his office, the emails, the ignored research, the proof that they'd known the truth all along, insurance policy or nuclear option. She hadn't decided yet. 10 a.m. The moderator called the forum to order. Henderson Development CEO spoke first. Generic platitudes about community partnership. Marcus presented Whitmore's commitment to inclusive engagement, more corporate emptiness. Then, and now, our community outreach specialist, Simone Green, will share our authentic engagement strategy. Simone stood, walked to the microphone, looked out at 100 faces waiting. Marcus sat in the front row, script in his hands, eyes boring into her like warnings. She thought of her grandmother, of 2 years swallowing her voice, of every person told they sounded wrong for existing authentically, made her choice. The microphone felt cold against her palm. Simone adjusted it, the screech of feedback silencing the room's murmur. She began with Marcus's script, professional, measured, empty. Whitmore and Associates recognizes the importance of community stakeholder engagement in the development process. 15 seconds in, she stopped mid-sentence. The room held its breath. Actually, Simone's voice shifted. Vowels relaxed. Rhythm changed. Truth emerged. Let me be real with you. Marcus's face drained of color. She watched him half rise from his seat, then freeze. I came here today with a script. Pretty words that don't say nothing. But you'll deserve better than performance. She gripped the microphone tighter. So here's the truth. Whitmore been ignoring your neighborhoods for years. Not because the money ain't there, it is. We got research proving Black and Latino communities represent billions in purchasing power. Heads nodded. People leaned forward. We ignored y'all because serving you means respecting you. Means speaking to you, not at you. Means hiring folks who look like you, sound like you, understand your actual needs. Her voice gained strength. And that makes some people uncomfortable. A woman in the third row said, Amen. Marcus stood fully now. Simone, she didn't look at him. Kept her eyes on the community. Last week, I presented this strategy to my company's executives. You know what they told me? That I sound too black. That my voice was unprofessional. That I needed to translate my ideas into language they could understand. Gasps rippled through the room. The Henderson CEO shifted in his seat. But here's what's real. They understood me fine. They just didn't like being reminded that I'm a whole person, not just a diversity checkbox. Simone pulled out her phone. Y'all want to see the emails? Where they call my accent urban? Where they say I need better cultural fit? Show us, someone called out. She projected the photos onto the screen behind her. Marcus's emails, Jennifer's mockery, Tom's dismissal, all of it displayed in brutal clarity. The room erupted. Angry murmurs. Heads shaking. The Henderson CEO's face hardened as he read the words. Marcus tried to interrupt. This is completely out of context. Context? Simone turned to him, voice carrying across the space. The context is 2 years of code switching. 2 years of making myself palatable. 2 years of you profiting from my insights while mocking how I deliver them. She faced the community again. Y'all know what it's like. Changing your voice for job interviews. Straightening your hair for professionalism. Being told you're articulate like it's a surprise. Heads nodded throughout the room. We shrink ourselves to fit spaces that were never designed for us. And they still act like we should be grateful. An older black man stood. So what you proposing? More fake promises? No, sir. Simone's voice steadied. I'm proposing real partnership. Hiring from your community. Training programs for your youth. Marketing that respects your intelligence instead of stereotyping. Revenue sharing, not just extraction. She clicked to her proposal slides. Real data. Authentic strategies, nothing sanitized. This plan could generate $43 million in revenue over 3 years. But only if it's done right. With respect. With real community leadership. With folks who understand that business language and street language ain't opposites. They're just different dialects of the same truth. The room sat in charged silence. Then the woman in the church hat stood, started clapping. Others joined, rising applause that felt like vindication and revolution and recognition all at once. Marcus stood frozen, face red. The Henderson CEO was typing rapidly on his phone. Simone let the moment breathe, then leaned close to the microphone one final time. That's my presentation. My real one. Y'all got questions, I got answers. And I promise no more scripts. Just truth. The forum erupted into conversation. Community members flooded Simone with questions. Genuine, engaged, exactly what Marcus's script would have never generated. She answered each one. In her voice, unapologetically. Marcus disappeared halfway through. She didn't watch him leave. When the forum ended, the Henderson CEO approached. His expression was unreadable. Ms. Green, that was unexpected. Simone's heart hammered. She'd just committed career suicide in front of Whitmore's biggest client. Yes, sir. Those emails, are they real? Every word. I can provide full documentation. He nodded slowly. Seemed to be calculating something. I'll be in touch with your firm's leadership. Thank you for your honesty. He walked away. Simone couldn't read whether that meant disaster or something else. The community center emptied slowly. An older woman approached, the one who'd said amen earlier. Baby, I watched them try to shrink my granddaughter for 20 years. Told her she talked ghetto, that she'd never be nothing if she didn't change. The woman's eyes were fierce. She's a lawyer now. Still sounds like herself. What you did today, that took courage. Simone's throat tightened. I might have just ended my career. Maybe. Or maybe you just started living it honestly. The woman squeezed her hand. Either way, you stood up. That matters. Monday morning, Simone was called into the executive conference room. Same space where they'd laughed at her 3 weeks earlier. Same glass walls, same leather chairs. Marcus sat at the head of the table. The CEO of Whitmore & Associates beside him. She'd cleaned out her desk that morning. Expected termination. The CEO spoke first. Ms. Green, we've had extensive discussions with Henderson Development following last week's forum. Here it comes. Simone thought. They've requested you specifically to lead their community engagement initiative. 3-year contract. They were impressed by your authenticity. Simone blinked. I'm sorry, what? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. They want you. Not the firm, you personally. They're making it a condition of renewing their contract with us, the CEO continued, which puts us in an interesting position. We've also received complaints about workplace discrimination following the exposure of certain internal communications. Marcus's face was stone. So, here's what's happening. You're being promoted to Director of Community Engagement. You'll report directly to me. You'll have full autonomy over strategy, hiring, and campaign development. The CEO's gaze was sharp. And Miss Green? We expect you to bring that same authenticity to everything you do here. Understood. Simone found her voice. And the cultural fit concerns? Consider them resolved. The CEO stood, extended his hand. Welcome to leadership, Miss Green. Do what you did Tuesday, but bigger. She shook his hand, stunned, victorious, terrified. Marcus didn't meet her eyes as she left, 6 months later. National Marketing Conference, Chicago. Simone stood backstage waiting for her introduction. Same nervous energy, different confidence. Her natural hair in twists adorned with gold cuffs. Emerald green suit that felt like armor and freedom simultaneously. The campaign she'd led became Whitmore's most successful initiative. $49 million in revenue, $6 million over projection. Community partnerships that actually meant something. Youth hiring programs that changed lives, but the numbers weren't what mattered most. The moderator's voice carried from the stage. Please welcome Director of Community Engagement, Simone Green, speaking on authentic leadership in corporate spaces. She walked into the spotlight, looked out at 300 faces, mostly white, mostly corporate, mostly performing the same mask she'd worn for 2 years. Good afternoon, y'all. She let the words land natural. Watched some faces tighten, others lean forward with curiosity. I'm here to talk about authenticity, not as buzzword but as business strategy. She clicked to her first slide, the photo of her grandmother at that voting rights rally. This is my grandmother, Rose Williams, civil rights activist, educator, woman who taught me that my voice carries generations. The room was silent now. listening. For 2 years, I tried to erase her from how I spoke. Thought professionalism meant sounding like I didn't grow up in Atlanta. Like I didn't code switch since middle school. Like I wasn't black, she paused. Like I wasn't whole, she shared the story. The humiliation, the emails, the choice. The forum where everything changed. Here's what I learned. Authenticity isn't unprofessional. It's the most professional thing you can offer. Because real connection requires real people. She clicked through slides showing campaign results. We didn't succeed despite me showing up as myself. We succeeded because of it. Simone's voice carried across the conference hall. Your employees are translating themselves daily. Erasing accents, straightening hair, code switching through meetings. They're giving you partial versions of themselves because they learned full versions aren't welcome. She thought of everyone who'd texted her after news of her promotion spread. Young black professionals saying they'd started wearing natural hair to work. Latino colleagues who stopped anglicizing their names in emails. People reclaiming pieces of themselves they'd been taught to hide. So here's my challenge. What brilliance are you missing? Because people don't feel safe being brilliant in their own voice. She let the question breathe. What revenue are you losing? Because authenticity makes you uncomfortable. The final slide appeared. Grandma Rose's words in bold text. Your voice carries generations. Don't you ever silence it? That's what she taught me. That's what almost cost me everything. That's what saved me. Simone's voice softened but held its power. Don't wait for permission to sound like yourself. Don't shrink to fit spaces that were never designed for you. Show up whole and watch how the world changes. She paused. Let the silence hold or keep performing. Keep code switching. Keep being safe. She smiled slightly. Just know safe never changed nothing. The audience erupted in applause. Standing ovation that felt different from the forums. This one tinged with recognition, discomfort, necessary awakening. Simone walked off stage, pulled out her phone. Texted her mother, Grandma Rose would be proud. I'm finally speaking her truth. The response came immediately. Baby, you're speaking your truth. That's what she always wanted, Simone smiled. Pocketed the phone. Headed toward the next session. She still code-switched sometimes, still navigated predominantly white spaces, still fought battles against bias both subtle and blatant, but she did it in her voice now, unapologetically, powerfully, completely herself. Because authenticity isn't a risk, it's the only path to freedom, and freedom, she'd learned, sounds like coming home,